Welcome back to the Power Project. I'm your host, Brandy Voth, and I am joined today with Tasha Wallace, founder of the Boon Project and Boon Coffee Roasters. Hey, Tasha, how are you?
Hey, Brandy. Thanks for having me today.
I'm so excited. When we met a little over a year ago, I was in a hiatus of the podcast and we had taken a break, but I knew that from the second I chatted with you, I'm like, look, I've got to have you on the podcast when I pick back up. I would like to share your story. So tell us a little about yourself before we jump into all of that.
Sure, absolutely. I was just actually getting started when I met you. I mean, we'd been going to Uganda for a while, but just getting started with the coffee roastery and really the nonprofit. We were about a year in. But to introduce myself, though, my name is Tasha Wallace. I'm the founder of the Boon Project, Agriculture with a Purpose. And I also just recently launched Boon Coffee Roasters, Coffee with a Purpose. And what we do is basically work in third world and fourth world communities, in some of the most impoverished communities, really rural, what we like to try to say is forgotten communities, because they haven't received the necessary support and access from the government yet. They are further away from those resources. And so we work with them to establish a framework for sustainability to really get them out of poverty. And so basically, the reason why I founded the Boon Project Agriculture with a Purpose was having been going to Uganda for the last 5.5, almost 6 years now. Really getting the opportunity to immerse myself into the issues that they're dealing with. I was going with another organization and basically learning a lot about what our communities had and didn't have access to for resources, and why are they really still in poverty. The statistics is for Ugandans is every 3 Ugandans that make it out of poverty, 2 fall back in. And why is that? And we saw the need to focus on what a term is called asset-based community development, and understanding what the assets that were available in the community that they can build a foundation, or the foundation's really already there, but is how do they continue to build upon that and improve their situation. And so we basically, I started assessing and seeing that coffee is one of their agricultural assets, and that they grow a lot of coffee. And then through contacts with friends that are doing missionary work in Central America and South America, they work with farmers to pay more than the fair trade price to provide that additional income to continue to build out the infrastructure in that community. And so I kind of felt called from that perspective to say, hey, let's see if something like this would work in Eastern Uganda. I was at a unique point in my life, 20 years in basically corporate world. And my background included basically risk management. I was working in the financial services industry to build sustainable processes because the regulators were coming down hard on the banks, and we were getting a lot of reoccurring fines. And the regulators got smart and said, okay, when you tell us that you're going to remediate this and you don't, how are you going to actually prove that you can put in place a sustainable process, which becomes hard, especially when you begin as a business to weather events like a COVID situation, a pandemic, a natural disaster, the economy fluctuating. And so the banks had to get smarter. And they had to be more tactical in saying, okay, if I'm going to have this process in place, if I'm going to lend this product, how do I ensure so without consumer harm, without disruption to operations? And also, everything else, all the interdependencies is financial impact to the organization. So do you have enough money to weather the storm? And taking that mindset, having been in corporate for so long, I'm like, I really want to do something different with my life. And being in Uganda was just overwhelming. And I was in a part of my life too, where I was starting to walk closer with God and learning more about Jesus and really strengthening my faith. It was something I did growing up, but didn't really have my full head wrapped around it. And I went through some other life changes and transformations that said, I've got to do something better with my time and with my money and with my skill sets. And so I loved corporate life. I loved what I was doing. I was continuing to climb the ladder, continuing to make more money, but I just still wasn't happy. So I did a lot of praying. I did a lot of reaching out to mentors, family, friends. And then I just started researching how can I really improve these farmers' lives and these communities with the God-given gifts that I felt like He's given me to use. And I really struggled with separating from corporate life because I had worked so hard. And my mom finally said, God doesn't give us things and put experiences in our lives for them to just be wasted. He will reuse those. And she said, I feel like He is calling you to transition all of that information to help these communities. And it has been mind blowing how taking that leap of faith and trusting in what He's been doing in my life and even the hard things that I've gone through to use those for these communities in Eastern Uganda. And we're also starting to have discussions in Burundi. So we want to be a global organization that helps these most impoverished communities out of poverty through sustainable agriculture. But we all know that they can grow agriculture. They've been growing it for generations and they're still not out of poverty. So we're putting controls in and risk management practices to ensure that they do get out of poverty and that what they're doing, they're going to get a good quality price and not be exploited at the market. And we're going to continue to walk alongside of them to make sure they have a voice in the market, they're protected, and that they are truly sustainable. So putting in all kinds of risk management and governance practices for them. And so I just, again, it's been amazing, even since you and I connected, the work that has been done, even in just the last 2 months. We've trained over 450 farmers and formed 6 women's savings groups. And interestingly, the men are starting to get a little bit jealous to say they want to start their own savings groups. But what's been incredibly fascinating is the men are starting to also kind of see, wait, we can work together. Women should have a voice. They have abilities to help us get out of poverty too. And so we've been just making strides towards changing the mindset with the social issues, in addition to the environmental and economic issues. I know that was a lot, but
we dove straight in head first. There's so many things that I want to speak to here that are just completely impressive and inspiring and really interesting to me, because I'm not a person with a risk management or an operations mindset, right? I'm a big picture visionary, take action, but not necessarily the systems and operations are not my thing. So that's why I love connecting with other people that fill in the spaces on those gaps. Talk to me about how you go in and work in these communities and villages in order to ensure that these farmers are getting paid, a higher than living wage, and ensure that they're not getting exploited. Because you can go and set up the infrastructure, but when you leave, what does it look like on the ground to make sure that this is a continued process?
Absolutely. So we do have a framework, and we have different controls in place. And one of the first steps is building relationships. And we've built relationships with the government, the Ministry of Agriculture, Specifically, since we were leading with coffee, we worked with UCDA, which is the Uganda Coffee Development Authority, and NACORI, which is the coffee research, because we have a vision for research and development as well in these products or assets that are being grown. It's a lot of relationship building. The community also has to trust us. Our first training, it was good, but it wasn't what we would hope for. Part of that is because in the past, these communities have had people come in and say they're going to help them and leave. And they're stranded, and they've given them a lot of things, but the tools and resources, they haven't been taught how to continue to keep moving it forward. They also, the women, there's a lot of social issues. Women are the most vulnerable, and the children. Women aren't allowed to own, or haven't been allowed to own land in the past. Most of the women in these communities are former child brides. So the dowry is still very strong and in existence there. And so because they don't have a whole lot of rights, they don't show up to the training. So we have to build trust with them too. Then the next piece is taking the business knowledge and understanding and beginning to scan the local market as well as the international market to build opportunities that can say, hey, before we start implementing all of these new concepts and growing all of these new things and improving and having this large volume of agriculture, harvest, is who's going to buy it, right? And so we have to line up buyers too. So that's one way that we want to make sure that they're sustainable, is really being proactive and looking at the entire value chain for them. And that value chain includes the government, it includes the community, it includes all of the processors, and it includes also all of the buyers. And so we build that relationship. But then also it is putting a team in place. Since having been there for several years, I've gotten to know a lot of the people in the community. And in any regards, nonprofits are hard to find committed resources. But, and even in working in a third world country, you can find committed resources, but they're also going through this transformation and this mindset change. And so you have to manage that as well. So there's a lot of educating and teaching them about the process too, and making sure that they understand it and getting them to stand upright. So we lead a lot with basically putting our trust in God. But then we also lead a lot with, hey, I'm going to tell you some things. I need you to do this, and here's how it needs to be done. And they come back, and whatever they do, if it's not right, we have another step in our framework, which is more of the last step, which is lessons learned and continuous improvement. And I always tell them, I'm learning too. I expect the feedback, and the same for you. So they're enjoying learning. And I think that's the other piece, is they're sponges and they want to learn. But in order to truly make them sustainable, it is really building the relationships with them, building trust in them. You put in a couple programs and see that they work, and they see that they work. And then they start to go, wow, we can do this. And then they start to form. We scout out the right resources, hopefully, but we know, and we've learned from experience, that we've had resources that we couldn't trust, or resources that still need a lot more hand-holding or knowledge and support to move it forward. And we want to work with them. And even in times when they're not standing upright, we want God to kind of direct us there and say, this is a learning opportunity for us. This is a learning opportunity for them. We just have to continue to pray about it and be patient with them to make sure that they do. So it's a lot of relationship building.
So I want to circle around to a couple of things that you mentioned here. In the beginning, you talked about the 6 women's savings groups. I want to talk about what that is and what that looks like. And then also, if you're working with women that were former child brides, they don't have a lot of rights, they are the most vulnerable, how is the approach that you're able to go in and and change some prejudices in those communities? And how are you enabling women and empowering women in that space while you're probably encountering obstacles along that journey?
Yeah. Again, it goes back to, the relationships that we're building. We have to pick low hanging fruit when it comes to that, right? And find a group that is more willing and open to entertain what we're trying to accomplish and pilot that with them. So we just did a pilot project, which included those 6 villages, and we'll take those lessons learned. But we're also building relationships for people that can mobilize the community that's willing to listen to their fellow neighbors or villagers about what we're doing. For the savings groups, it's really interesting. I don't know how they do it either, because there's just not a lot of income. For them to save $1 in a week is massive, right? Just to give you an example, a typical Ugandan family is 7 to 10 people within a mud hut. And $30 a month would feed 7 to 10 people one meal a day, maybe one meal every other day for a month. But that's only rice and beans. And so, and maybe some corn maze. And so to save $1 is a lot. But the women are coming together to form a group. And what they'll be doing is saving their money each week. And then we are going to be matching them on their savings with a microloan to start their business. And then they have they're coming to the table with their own money. And then that ensures that they're going to take ownership. Well, we can't always say, but it would make sure that they take ownership, or that's our attempt. We're helping them get the rest of the money, but then they've got to pay it back. And that when they pay it back, what they know is they're going to be paying it back to help the next set of women start their own business and form their own group. So that's a parish development model too. Uganda's starting to implement that across the country as well too. It's been successful in other countries. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel if we don't have to. And it seems to be working, but we'll continue to monitor it and see, and continue to take the lessons learned from it. So yeah, and then just the mindset with the women there, and even the men. You're controlling 2 factors, or trying to improve 2 factors. Is the men saying, okay, yes, we'll let our women come into the training. We'll let them be a part of owning their own business. And we really right now focus on owning it separately. So a lot of the men will basically, they're just going to take the harvest to the market and sell it. The women clean the house, they take care of the kids, they manage the crops, they source fuel, which is firewood, and they go to get the water. They do it all. And then the men will take that, go to the market, sell it. They don't even really get a good price for it. And then they never bring the money back for the women to see or even have. And so we're trying to divide that a little bit and bring these women that don't have that ability because of their past, or their husband doesn't allow them, to let them start their own business. We are, again, working with low-hanging fruit that are more open to adopting this. And we hope that other villagers are seeing this, men and women, of how things are moving forward, and that they will open their minds up to do it. But we've actually created a church in the center of our project. So we just launched our first church plant, and we're going to be leading with the gospel as well, and loving on people, and sharing that, and just basically showing how we're making God tangible in those ways without really forcing it on them, and then letting them say, hey, wait, this is working for them. They're making money this week. They just sold, their harvest, or they just sold their mushrooms. So maybe we should listen and see what this is about. So again, it's a long process, but it's transforming the whole face of a community. And so we're going to have a lot of uphill battles with it, with challenging culture. But we've seen a lot of progress so far with the ones that have adopted it, and more are starting to find out, wait, this is really, they're doing really good. And they're starting to come over to the church and ask how they can be involved. So we've trained 450 farmers. We've got almost 200 women, and then we've got over 150 youth that are forming their own businesses as well too.
So awesome. But what I'm super curious about, and I want to hear more about, is the new branch of Boon Agriculture with the mushroom project.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So mushroom has actually more value when it goes to the market per pound. So how we came to mushroom, we were originally just going to be focused on coffee. And I started doing some research about the other assets they grow in their community. And basically, I compared, like, okay, what does this get per pound in the market? What does this get? What's easier to grow? What's, less to manage? Those things. Things that we can get income to their household faster. And so basically in looking at that, we saw that, well, mushroom compared to coffee, compared to coffee actually has the least value when it goes to the market. In looking at that, I came across, did some more research, and was looking at what the country was offering. And I was talking actually to a friend of mine who is does film work for another nonprofit in Western Uganda. And it's an organization called Africa Development Promise. And the founder of that had worked for the World Bank. But she started a mushroom cooperative in Western Uganda and Eastern Rwanda. And they have developed a framework that helps women come up and start their own mushroom business. And then from their income that is received from the mushroom business actually is invested into other women that want to start other businesses. And so they also provide business and household management skills, and teaching them to save, and teaching them to plan for their businesses and all of that. And so we ended up meeting with them when we were there in September. I'd been in discussions with them for about 2 years, but COVID, obviously put a wrench in everything. But basically, we met with them, and we were going to form a partnership. We actually have formed a partnership. Their basically women's cooperative will come over to ours, and ours can go over to theirs. But it's really going to take a lot more than just one organization supporting us. We have engaged the extension workers, and found out that we do have a resource locally from the government that's going to be training our women. But then another woman and her husband who formed a church on the other side of the region where we're at is going to be coming and helping us to expand the program. And what will happen is we'll start a mushroom house, and we'll have a center of excellence. And that basically means the mushroom house would become a incubator for all future mushroom house businesses. Again, we've got close to 400 villages. And what will happen is we'll use that, we'll get it growing, and then we'll employ several women to run it. And then from there, we will take spores to help start up the next mushroom house. And then any income that is received from the mushroom house will be microloans to go towards those next startups. We've already secured a relationship with a buyer out of Kenya for 450 pounds of mushrooms a week. So they know that we have a program that we're standing up. And so we'll be standing up multiple mushroom houses this year, starting with our first one this week. We're going to be breaking ground on construction with it. But then we're going to work on piloting that model to continue to replicate and form women's groups. And also, as it receives income, we'll start microloaning, and that will be paid back. And then again, to start the next project. We have a motto that we're working on socializing with our community, our teams adopted, called Learn, Grow, and Go. You learn about new agricultural practices, how to improve them. You learn about business and financial management, as well as household management. And you learn about God. and then you grow. You grow your new assets, you grow with your new practices, and you grow in your faith. You help basically your household grow financially and learn to save for basically, every child pays school fees right now, and then pay to improve the quality of your home. And then you go. Once you've learned everything and you've grown and been able to master that and be able to understand and learn about God, and you go to the next community and you help them learn what the new skills that you've gained. You share that with them and help them stand up out of poverty, as well as teach them about God and how He's helped you.
I love this. And yeah, like I love your systems and operations brain. I love that. Like I love listening to someone that can just break it down and implement it, because I work in such a completely opposite manner. I'm like, this is what we're going to do. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're just going to make it happen. And I'm just constantly like falling forward.
Yeah, that's how you learn, though. You learn that way.
Right. I know. I'm curious. When did you say was your first trip to Uganda, or when did you start going to Uganda? And what was really like the first push for you to move into that space?
So I was 2017, actually. So this is 22. So yeah, this will be my 5th trip this year, actually. With COVID, I would have been there more. But in 2017, I went. My little sisters had gone with a family friend, their organization. And they met a little girl there, and her name happened to be Tasha. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I really want to meet them. I really want to travel to the other side of the world. I loved the work that they were doing. And I was starting to go through that transformation in my life at that time. And when they went in January, and I decided, well, they're going back again in the fall. I said, I'm going, and Tasha needs a sponsor. And so I'm like, well, I want to sponsor her and I want to go meet her. And so we went and started just learning about what they were doing. And I was just really going with the intent of, how can I help Legacies and Miracles, which is the organization I was with. They had planted a church there. We had a school, and they had 600 kids. I would say probably 50% to 60% are orphaned. And so basically just loving on the children there, loving on the staff and the teachers, helping to put in projects like chicken projects, goat projects, cow projects. And then we built a community dining hall, which became eventually their church, and the school kitchen and mess hall and assembly hall. And the campus has continued to grow. And probably the second year there, I started having conversations with them about coffee. And that was about the time, between trips, was learning more about how can I help these communities, and really spending time thinking about it, and connecting with friends. And so the second year, I went and started having those discussions and started learning about the government programs that were available that they may have not have had access to. And then from there, just continue to learn and continue to connect. I would say it was 2019 this year, 2019, 2020. 2020 was when I applied for nonprofit status. In 2019, I took a sabbatical from corporate life. I had been working literally 70, 80-hour work weeks for almost 2 years in a row. And going through a transformation, I just needed to kind of really take some time away of the stressors and really figure out my life and what I wanted to do. And I ended up going overseas for 5.5, 6 months, and learning about other cultures, and really focusing on healing physically and mentally. I'd had a hysterectomy as well. And I went into it positive, but I came out of it saying, wait, I can't have children. So it kind of sent me backwards a little bit mentally. I was also basically the time that I took away, I started AA program and became sober at that point. So I was working hard and I was playing hard. um, and so I've just been focused on healing my life from that perspective. And when I got back, I realized, part of the way through the trip, I think God's calling me to really spend more time thinking through and standing up a program in Uganda. And it just continued to just unfold from there. And I got a lot of reassurance from God along the way, which I'm a person that doesn't trust very much. And I need a lot of reassurance to know that I'm moving in the right direction, or to know that people care, and those types of things. And so I said, I'm going to apply for nonprofit status. If I get it, God's saying I'm moving in the right direction. I got it in 4 months. I was told it would take almost 2 years from some. And I was like, well, wow, it must be meant to be. So I'm just going to keep trusting in this being the first answer of, yes, you're moving in the right direction. And then from there, I just continued to share what I was wanting to do. And more people were, that's great. That's amazing. Yes. That's, something that I see you doing for long term. And so I've kind of built momentum based on that, but more so on God. And now things are happening so quickly that it's almost scary and overwhelming. And I have to pray every day that God doesn't give us more than we can handle. And so, yeah, I think it was 2019, I got the approval, where we applied. In 2020, we got approval. And then we were planning to go, and then COVID happened. And so now we finally got back in September, and we did our initial project planning and launched, and then raised some money to get started. And we officially started our first project 2 months ago, and we've just had an overwhelming response on a very little budget. So.
Right. Well, I think that I like to talk to people right now in these episodes that we're recording currently about how the last 2 years really shaped them, changed them, forged them, how we saw God's provision in the time. And so, I mean, you took sabbatical from corporate life, you launched a nonprofit, you got sober, you've launched a social enterprise, like all of the things that you've done in the last 2 years, really, it's just a beautiful testimony to God's will and your faithfulness and your obedience. It doesn't mean it was easy, but it's really beautiful to see what's come out of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been unbelievable. I struggled a lot with making this step and separating from what I thought my life should be like. And I thought, I'm the only person that can make me happy. Well, I was wrong about that, because I was trying to make myself happy and I wasn't. And accepting, my faith and leaning in and trusting God has built that happiness, and replaced some holes in my heart that I thought could never be filled. At least I didn't think they would be filled that way. Through COVID, and even just turning my attention away from things that weren't doing me good, started to see other ways in my life that I could do things that would make an impact and make me happy. And COVID really tested the stand up of a nonprofit, especially from a fundraising perspective. And I'm sitting here going, we got to have money to do everything with this. And I said, this is not always going to happen. People are going to be scared to use any savings during COVID because they may be out of a job, or, they may not have access to certain things anymore. They have to save. The economy could turn. Things could get more expensive. We're seeing inflation right now. But it was okay. I've got to really find a way that we can still move them forward without needing the finances. And sadly, COVID set them back. And I think that also motivated them a little bit too. You're already in a third and fourth world country. They had made steps to be able to move forward a little bit. There's food scarcity, and basically their income they earn is based on harvest. And as we know, agriculture, we're used to packaged preserved foods. We have canning processes. We've got, boxed foods, all of that. They don't have any of that really. And when they went to market with their harvest right before COVID, or right when COVID happened, the government shut them down, restricted them. They had curfews. At one point, they weren't even allowed to leave 10 feet from their house. So they couldn't go into the market. They had to abandon their crops and harvest, and all of that is perishable. They couldn't get access to seeds to replant. So they went through a very tough time as well and no more access to food, setting them back further than where they had come from in most instances. I don't know how you can get any worse, but it did. And with that, all the other things that a impoverished or location would deal with, or country, is increased sex trafficking, increased child abuse, we now have a large number of teen brides. Teen moms, and dowry, because the process with a dowry, or the purpose, is the family would sell the girl to a man for income, for the family, for food. And most of the time, the young girl's being traded for a goat, a cow, a pig, or a chicken. And they're traded to a man that's 40, 50, and they're used for cleaning, for producing children. And a lot of times they're beaten when they're no longer producing, or, and a lot of times their age, they're beaten and abused and sent back out into the bush. A lot of times their families don't take them back either. But this is what they've known. So that increased again during COVID as well. So yeah, it's COVID has put a wrench in everything, but the silver lining is, one of the things was, okay, this is a pandemic and we have to make sure they're sustainable through a pandemic. Well, first we've got to get them to survival, into survival status, that they can survive, but then how do we make them sustainable? So for me, it was really, we've got to create a local economy. We've got to create more job opportunities. The only way we're going to do that is through creating businesses. So they need to learn new trade skills. They need to diversify what they're doing now and improve upon it. And to ensure that they're sustainable, we have to build oversight programs, and teaching them about KPIs and KRIs to measure themselves. And so we're going to be working on building all of that out too. But it's been hard. But we've done it, thankfully. God has allowed it to happen. So I feel like, again, we're still moving down the right path. And I just ask him every day to continue to give me wisdom and understanding, continue to reach into my team's hearts, continue to, work on changing their mindsets, to empowering them to know that they are truly capable. It's just like us. We have teachers and, preschool, elementary, middle school, high school, college, in the community. We have community resources. They don't have that. So the learn, grow, and go concept kind of slowly builds the ripple effect of building in those resources. So the village to the left can train the village to the right. And then the two villages on the left and the right can train the villages ahead of them and continue to move that model forward. With our discussions starting in Burundi, our teams in Uganda and our church wants to establish as a missions church. And they want to go to Burundi and teach them how they became sustainable with working together, the savings programs, improving the agriculture, tapping into the government. This framework that we've laid out, they want to teach them that. Burundi has a little bit to share with them on agriculture, reforestation, creating their own seedlings, and building out nurseries as well. So it's a win-win. And so our goal for next year, it probably won't go next year. We'll work remotely. COVID has shown us that we can do that. As long as there's access to a network, we can get them the devices so that they can continue to communicate. which has been another God thing, is that I'm here where I should be there, but I'm really strict with my team and giving money to them to make sure they're using it. But we're going to be working and sharing this framework with Burundi as our second pilot into another country and see how that goes and vice versa. So God's been amazing. And I never would have thought I would find myself today saying, I, have gone to Africa. I've gone to Southeast Asia. I've experienced the third world. I've been able to support a third world country with my knowledge more so than finances, and it just goes to show that we all have something to offer if we're willing to share it that can help someone that's less fortunate than us. And that to me is just fuel for me. I thrive on that. And I'm learning from them too. But I just honestly don't know how all of this, we were just talking about this as a team with my Ugandan team. How did we all come together? And we're sitting there going back, there's no way on this earth we would have ever connected if it hadn't have been for God. And we're all starting to realize how great and powerful and mighty that he is.
I love his provision and I love his plan and I love seeing it unfold for friends of mine and watching organizations grow and flourish to bring glory to him. I think it's so fantastic. How can we be praying for you and Boon Coffee and Boon Project specifically?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the finances are the hard part, but we are finding ways around that. So just specific prayer to continue to think outside of the box and not have such a large dependency on finances or financial support. But everybody needs infrastructure, and that's our goal. Is we really want to provide the infrastructure, and we are transitioning to the mindset of we will provide a microloan if you meet us halfway, and that we'll work with you on paying that microloan back. But what we're guaranteeing you is that we will be finding a buyer for you and selling that. So it's just continued motivation there. But just praying for the continued acceptance of the work that we're doing, continuing for our teams there. They are volunteering. We don't pay them, and it's a sacrifice for them in such a desperate situation, and they're giving their spiritual gifts and even what little savings that they have. They're coming to the table as well. So just continue to pray for the strength of our team, and their faith in God continues to grow. But that is casted through the communities, and that the communities are seeing that it's not just the work of the individual, but it's the work of God working through them to reach the rest of the community. So just that momentum continues, and that our church is now going to be the center of our nonprofit and our mission center and center of excellence, and that church continues to grow as well. They're working without a roof, but it's working. And we just got them chairs. And so as we continue to move them forward, we want to continue to build our headquarter office out. And basically my board of director there, Mary, and her husband, Mary's on our board, and she's kind of driving our women's empowerment. They've donated their land to have the church and the center of excellence on for right now. And so just continuing to let the church grow. They went from 12 members in February to 60 members now, and they're baptizing people each week. And so just continue for the community to learn about God and that. And then for the coffee side, it's hard to manage both. And I also still part-time consult just to be sustainable for myself. But just on the coffee side, to continue to educate the consumers and the work that we're doing. And at some point, we hope to be offering our community's products through Boon Coffee Roasters, but then a larger model, I think that I shared with you before, is our goal is to have a large number of byproducts become businesses in our communities. And so at some point, I'd love to have some sort of global mercantile where we're popping up different stores with everything that our communities are creating, and it tells that story as well too. So at some point, Boon Coffee Roasters evolves and becomes coffee, cocoa, the hemp byproducts, the mushroom byproducts, and all of that.
Friends, I hope that you enjoyed this episode today. I know that it fuels my heart to be able to bring these episodes to you. If you did indeed like this show today, can you do me a favor? Click subscribe down below. Give us a like, share with your friends, write a review, tell everyone about the Power Project podcast so that we can continue creating content for you. I can't wait to chat with you again, but until then, go out and live your best purpose-filled lives.